Happening right now, a big vote in Colchester that could impact the town's schools. The Board of Finance has proposed some significant cuts to the school budget after voters turned down the first proposal.
So they're going to try again here. Your reporter Anna Stansfield is live to break down the new plan. With voting, that's now underway.
Hey guys, good morning. Since voters turned down that original plan, the Board of Finance cut the Board of Education's budget by $1.5 million. And today, if this budget does go through and pass, teachers, parents, and students could start seeing the impacts as early as this fall. The first day of school could look different in Colchester if this budget is approved by voters today. $1.5 million cut from the Board of Education, eliminating positions at elementary and middle schools and reducing the number of paraeducators at the intermediate school. The town also cut several of the district's central office positions and reduced some of those contracts and salaries. People outside the school system will see some impacts too. The town also made cuts to road improvement budgets and is proposing to get rid of the public salt and sand pile during the winter. This proposal comes with a 3.5% mill rate increase as well, impacting your property taxes. Now, polls here at the town hall have been open for just about 40 minutes now. They opened at 6 o'clock this morning, and we're continuing to see people file in. It's been pretty packed since those polls opened. They will remain open until 8 o'clock tonight for voters in town. I'm your reporter live in Colchester, Anna Stansfield, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.